So, folks, this is yet another episode from the TGV Global Speaker Series, and our guest for today is Takatoshi Shibayama, and he's from Japan. Taka is the head in sales APAC of Copper, and he provides custody and prime services of digital assets to institutional clients who are investing or providing financial services for crypto assets. Copper also provides access to leverage liquidity in OTC trading and then DeFi connectivity. DeFi stands for decentralized finance and staking services, etc. Prior to this, he was an analyst and investor of distressed corporate situations for about 17 years and starting his career with investment banks like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. Later, joined a US hedge fund, Davidson Kempner Capital Management, and co-founding 3D Investment Partners in Singapore. So, as we prepare to delve into our conversation on the topic at hand, from investment banking to crypto, navigating two worlds of finance and why he believes in blockchain's game-changing potential, here is an exciting twist. First, let us tickle his brain. So, Taka, get ready for a rapid fire round of random words. I'll mention a few, and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. If you're ready, let's get started.
Let's go.
Curiosity.
What drives personal development?
Invention.
What drives the world?
Future.
What we aspire for, but not to linger on.
Book.
Read as much as you can.
Movie.
For nighttime fun.
Food.
Can't resist.
Japan.
My country.
Creativity.
Also drives the world.
Technology.
Need it, but not completely necessary.
And the last one is fame.
Completely not necessary.
Interesting and to the point. Thank you so much for participating in the first rapid fire round so sportively. There is one more exciting rapid fire round waiting towards the fag end of the episode. And folks, welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series where we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. I'm your host Navin Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place through valuable discussions that add value not only to your life but also to your career. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Taka, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice. I'm thrilled to host you today and engage in this conversation. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling wonderful. Thank you very much for inviting me to your wonderful podcast. I'm very excited to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it simple. And I'm sure I'm not going to put you on spot. So yeah, let us unleash this world of finance as well as crypto. And before we get into the core of the conversation, let's begin with your success mantra. So Taka, please share with our audience the top 3 things that have contributed or attributed to your success so far.
I think the 3 words would be conviction, adaptability, and resilience.
Wow. Conviction, adaptability, and resilience. And Taka, your journey has taken you from Japan to the US and again back to Japan. And you have experienced different cultures as well as work environments. So how has this international background shaped your perspective on the finance and blockchain industries? And what unique insights have you gained from this particular journey?
So I was born in Japan and grew up until 5. And then for my father's work, I had to move to the United States. And I lived there for about 10 years. And went back to Japan. So this is around when I was 15, 16 years old. And what I experienced during that time is a monstrous shift in changes in my life. And as you can imagine, a 5-year-old who only spoke Japanese moving to the United States. If you've been to Japan, if you've ever been to the US, you'll see that the cultures are nothing alike. It's a very different culture, and obviously the language as well. So the impact that one has when moving to and having that great change in life will impact you some way or the other. For me, it was when I moved to the United States. Obviously, I didn't know the language. The people were different. The country was so big, and this is New York, not in the city, but in the suburb areas, and having to learn a new language because I had no other option. And, during that time, obviously, you're molded into a very American person, basically. The culture is very accepting of like dragging you into their culture and then molding you into an American. So as a child, I believe that I became extremely, you know, American in that sense. And then when I was 15, 16, when I moved back to Japan, then it took me to the polar end again. By Japan is also another country where it has very strong cultural strength to it. And even back in those days, I know this is like early 1990s, Japan was not that open to, you know, foreign countries, and they didn't really understand like what, you know, Americans were, or you know, what kind of like Western, there was not much that influence. So for me, having that title shift, it
Mm.
makes you somewhat very precocious in a way that you have to be able to kind of accept that change, because it's not, you didn't decide, your parents decided, and I have to make that shift in learning again Japanese, which my level of Japanese at that point was like 5 year old.
Mm.
So you know, in Japan, the scriptures and everything are very difficult to
Yeah.
learn. The sentence structure is very hard. The formality of the language use is very different. The people are completely different. They think in a very different way. So that forms like, okay, how can I swing from one end to another? And it makes you, and going to that word that I just mentioned in the beginning, adaptability is very, very important. And that, I think, will shape your personality quite a lot. When I started working, I spent a few years in Tokyo, but afterwards I moved to London, and I am now in Singapore. I worked in Hong Kong as well. I generally lived in quite a lot of countries
Mm.
now, and that adaptability to be able to kind of flex yourself, that so you can be able to live in a different culture, be able to kind of take in what you think is very positive, what you think is very interesting to you, and then blend that into your personality. I believe was something that was, you know, really kind of like given to me because
Mm.
of that upbringing that I had.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I've been to the US and not yet to Japan, but yeah, I see that the cultures are completely different, and I think having this kind of global exposure will help us in leading successful professional and the business life, right? So great
Yeah.
to
So one
know.
thing, yeah, one thing I like to add to that is that,
Yeah.
you know, when I was in the US, I mean, I wasn't particularly a bad student.
Mhm.
But then when I go to Japan, all of a sudden, because I can't understand, you know, what people are saying, or what people are trying to teach me, and
Mm.
all even math was done differently. You know, all the things that I learned about history of US and all was completely irrelevant as well. So like, I go from like a top performing student into the bottom performing student,
Mm.
and having to kind of bring yourself back to that level, because I had this, you know, heart that, you know, and I knew that, you know, I'm not a stupid person. It's just the
Mhm.
language barrier that I have to overcome. So I don't want to be stuck in a situation where, you know, I'm the worst performing student in this class. So, you know, I just have that drive to make sure that I come back to where I was before. And
Mhm.
that's another thing that you'll probably experience living in a different country. All of a sudden you speak a new language, and then you just feel like a baby because you can't speak, but your mind is already quite mature. So you want to say something, but you can't do it, and then you feel like you're falling behind. And again, going to that resilience part is also essential. You have to be resilient to, you know,
Mm.
changes, resilient to being bad at something, and then bringing yourself back to where you were before.
Awesome. I loved it. I think thanks for sharing that background information as well. And Taka, with an 18-year career in proprietary investing and having navigated through significant financial crises like the dot-com bubble burst and the subprime mortgage crisis, can you share a specific experience that taught you valuable lessons about risk management and also investment strategy?
Sure. So as you mentioned in the beginning, I invested in distressed corporate strategies. So what that investment strategy entails is that we take a look at a company who's in a distressed situation. So it could be in a restructuring, could be in a bankruptcy procedure, and we look at the fundamental value of that company, and then we buy it as cheaply as possible. So it's very similar to like value investing, but it has a different angle to it because it's in a distressed situation. So in that sense, we're looking at the fundamental value of the company and buying it lower than the actual fundamental value because they're in that special situation. By nature, it is a very conservative investment
Mm-hmm.
because you're buying it cheaply than what
Mm-hmm.
it actually is. So, in my investment strategy, and it goes across many different asset classes as well, is that you always have to find that value of the investment that you're doing, and then being able to hold that asset at a level where or purchase or acquire that at a level where you think it's a discount to market. So when that happens, then your portfolio actually becomes very resilient to a lot of the market swings, because if something like subprime happens, or if something like .com or some kind of bubble happens, then because you're still buying it at the lows, you are still going to make money in the end. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of turmoil. My portfolio went down quite significantly because of these special incidents. But then you have to think about, okay, why did I buy this? Why do I believe in this? What is my conviction on this particular investment that I made? And how can I not get emotionally attached to it and be able to drive through the turbulence that you're going
Mm-hmm.
through? So what I think in any business that you're making or any investment that you're making is to make sure that your portfolio, your company is always resilient to the downside, always higher, so that you have a bear market in mind. Always create a portfolio that if the market swings completely negative towards you, then
Mm-hmm.
you still have an investment that still at the end of the day is going to make money,
Mm-hmm.
and not be emotionally attached to it.
Oh, I think emotional aspects plays a critical role here. Now let's switch gear and move forward. Talking about launching this hedge fund that grew over $1 billion in assets under your management is a remarkable achievement. So, what were some of the key challenges you faced along the way, and what strategies or decisions do you credit for your fund's success?
So I took advantage of a few things. One is that there are not that many Japanese people that speak English very fluently in the market in general. So I was able to take advantage of that. And then also, there are not that many Japan focused value investing strategies in the market. So, and because I come from that background, I took an advantage of that, which you can say it's part luck, but it's also by my particular choice to get into that particular strategy. And then also I had the experience. So, I think that anything that you do, you always have to find that gap in the market. Where is that gap that, one can fulfill itself? There's always a lot of investors, capital allocators that are very interested in the Japanese market, because right now it's still the third largest economy in the world, and there are money-making opportunities to it. So where can I find myself? Where can I place myself in a right spot so that people would notice me and be able to invest in what I want to do? That is, I think, very important for anything, investing, business creation. I think that's something that you always need to look at, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why I think it was
Mm-hmm.
successful. The other thing that also makes it successful is that we had a very concentrated book of investments, meaning that if I had $1 billion, I'm not going to put a billion trades on. I'm going to choose, let's say, 25 high conviction investments into the portfolio. And as I mentioned before, with the investment strategy that I have, to make sure that it's resilient towards the downside, and obviously you're buying it cheap, so you have the upside. And if there's any market turmoil, then you'll be able to drive through that. And so I think that portfolio construction also helped through market turbulence. You could take like COVID, for example, or a few other things that happened during the time that we had. Obviously, I was not working for that fund anymore at that time, but
Mm-hmm.
the portfolio has done pretty well even through that turmoil as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool. This is impressive, and I think you're trying to fill the gap by identifying where the market needs. And as you said, like your fluency in English, and also not many people are into your field. I think you took advantage of everything, and now you're standing tall here as a successful person. Now let's talk about your interest towards this crypto industry. So crypto industry is known for its volatility and also rapid changes. So can you share a story or experience that illustrates how you have weathered the ups and downs of this industry and still maintained a successful career throughout?
Yeah. So I think my message is very straightforward, and it's always the same. Unfortunately, it's a little bit boring, but I'll repeat the same thing again. So when I got into blockchain, it was or crypto for that matter. This was around 2016, and during that time, the narrative of crypto was a little bit different from what we hear today. Back then, it was people were thinking about, let's create an alternative financial system that is not governed by the banks, the governments, the central banks, and try to build a alternative to that. Not because you want to take them down, but to make sure that if that system fails, then you have something else that you can rely on. And I think that that's also something that I really believed in, because obviously we've seen history over and over again. Governments do not stand forever, right? The Rome Empire failed. Many civilizations failed, and our existing civilization today is not going to be resilient to that either. I mean, there's always going to be a turning point where things will change. And so I believe that we do need a alternate financial system if in case that happens. So with this conviction, I got into crypto,
Mhm.
and obviously the narrative has changed quite a lot, but I still think that what blockchain and crypto still can promise is a alternative way for people to get access to financial services without having a middleman in between. The other thing that I find, the strong conviction in is that, a lot of our financial settlements, meaning that if I want to send money from me to you, or if I'm sending money to the United States or elsewhere, usually it takes T plus 2 or 3 days. So if you think about every financial transaction that happens, not just payments, but even trades that you do on exchanges, it does take T plus 2 or 3, or sometimes even 4, or even longer, which means that if I take an example of a artery, like your blood
Mm.
vessels.
Yeah.
Think of that as being clogged, right? So the
Mhm.
blood is not flowing through because of all these manual, intermediaries that exist, and the work that it's being done to enable this. So blockchain also can remove this type of, kind of the blood flow, so to
Mhm.
say, in the financial space. So blockchain does promise instant settlement, which means
Mhm.
that if I send, cryptocurrencies, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin, but even if it's a US dollar stable coin, then I can send it to you instantly. Which means that if every transaction in this world becomes instant, whether you're trading shares or you're doing
Yeah.
payments, if they
Mm.
can be settled instantly, then that blood will flow much rapidly, which
Mhm.
means that the circulation of money would increase, and then you'll have a lot more capital efficiency in the market, which means that more money will be able to be delivered to you. You don't have to, even if you think about accounts receivable payments, in some industries it takes 180 days to settle. Think about how much of that capital is locked during that time, which actually can be reinvested and reused in the economy. So I think that those two things, it will actually allow blockchain to flourish. And that with that conviction, even if there's a market turmoil, I stay very convicted.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes sense and it is very clear. And Taka, let's talk about your career part. So you have had a diverse and dynamic career path. And are there any mentors or role models who have had a significant influence on your journey? And if so, what did you learn from them?
So I think there's a couple of things, and I wouldn't say they're actual people per se. Well, okay, maybe I'll use one person as an example. One thing that I think that success should mean is not always about financial success. It's about success in life as a whole. And when I think about life success, it's not really the kind of material things that really matter to me. And one person that actually kind of taught me in that sense, and this person is probably well known in, especially in the entrepreneurial space, is Naval Ravikant. And he was on a Tim Ferriss podcast. and he mentioned just one phrase, and he didn't really elaborate much on it, but it kind of stuck in me for a while. He said, "Happiness is a choice," and I pondered on it, and I thought, happiness is a
Mm.
choice. We're
Yeah.
so used to or conditioned to think that happiness is something that just kind of flies down to you once you achieve something
Yeah.
or once you obtain certain things, but it's actually not. You know, you have to make your life happy in order to be happy. It is not something that you obtain, but you have to create your own happiness. And I really thought about it, and that's why a lot of things started to crumble down when I thought about that word. And I thought, okay, let me take out the negativities in my life.
Mm.
That's what makes me unhappy. If I have no negative feelings of my life,
Mm.
then that will make me happy.
Mm.
So I thought about my job. Do I like my job? Do I
Mm.
like the people that I'm surrounding myself with? Do I like the situation I'm putting myself in, living in a certain country or living in a certain situation? And I started to take down every single one of those negative feelings by removing them from my life.
Mm.
And that actually led me to actually quit the hedge fund industry.
Mm.
Not just because I wanted to get into crypto, but for a long time, because I've been working in that space for, as you mentioned, 17 years.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of like a exhaustion,
Mm.
and because I was driving so fast in my career, and I'm thinking that if I do this, if I do that, then I'll be successful, or I'll make a lot of money, etc. But those things actually didn't really contribute to my happiness at all. So I thought, why can't I do something that makes me happy and think
Mm.
about the money later? So that's one thing that really kind of changed my life, and I'll call him a mentor in that sense with those three words: happiness is a choice. And the other thing that I believe that contributed quite a lot to my life is playing music or playing sports, because the sports or the music that I played is very individual. So I practice jujitsu, and I've been practicing this for about 12, 13 years now. And I've been awarded a black belt last year. And if I think about all the journey, I take time off from work. I exercise probably 4 or 5 times a week. And also it's a very lonely sport if you think about it, because of course you have training partners, but you also have to train yourself constantly. And even if you don't want to go, you got to get up and go, because you want to get better at it. That constant drive to perfection is something that I think is extremely necessary in order for you to think that you're going to succeed, because it's the same as playing instruments. You practice the same phrase over and over, like it's extremely boring. You might think so, but doing that repetitious work and drilling over and over again to get to that perfection is something that you have to have in yourself. And if you don't have it, then you don't master it. And that's something that I take to my work or to my life in general. And I don't think of that as a hurdle to my life, but I take it as something that's valuable, that creates who I am.
Super. The Taka, this has been incredible conversation, but it's the time for us to add some spice and some more excitement to the episode. So get ready for the second rapid fire round, wherein we dive into a series of intriguing questions just to spice up the episode. If you're ready, let's dive in.
Sure, let's go.
All right, here comes the first bullet out of rapid fire round. If you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
Question everything.
Question everything. And would you rather have a rewind button for your life or a pause button to freeze the time briefly, and why?
I'll pick the latter, because I think that rewinding the clock undoes a lot of things that happened to me, good things and bad things, and I don't think that's really necessary because I'm quite happy of who I am.
Nice. And can you describe yourself in just one word?
Determined.
Determined. And share a quirky habit or a guilty pleasure that you are not ashamed of.
I'm okay. So I do a very so I like listening to podcasts, and thank
Mm-hmm.
you for inviting me to this podcast as well, because I love it. I usually listen to it on my commute, but sometimes when I'm listening to the podcast, I get distracted by looking at somebody or looking outside and finding something. So sometimes I lose my train of thought. So what
Mm-hmm.
I do is I play Sudoku while I listen to podcasts, and it completely allows me to focus on the podcast for some reason. I have no idea how that happens, but that's a little quirk that I that I have.
No, that's interesting. Even I listen to a lot of podcasts and I get distracted at times due to some calls or something. But usually, commute time and also during my evening jog or walk time is something which is where I listen to a lot of them. But yeah, good tip. It sounds interesting to me. And Taka, if you could have any superpower for a day, what would it be and why?
I'll make the world silent for a day.
And last one for the rapid fire. What is one electronic gadget that you'd like to see or invent yourself?
I like to see a gadget where I can transport to a different place within a second.
Yeah, teleportation is huge in demand on TGV. I think inventors
Yeah.
out there, please invent one teleportation device or a time machine. So both of them are huge in demand. Good.
Indeed.
I loved your rapid fire responses. And let's flip back to the mainstream. So, what advice would you offer to the younger generation aspiring to build a career in finance or blockchain, especially in the light of challenges and uncertainties they might face along the way?
Mm. So finance in general is a very turbulent and very changing market all the time, and you will be faced with you know bear markets and bull markets all the time. So what if you're aspiring to be in finance, if you're aspiring to be in crypto,
Mhm.
it's going to be a very volatile career. A lot of people get fired. They have to get another job, constantly moving. So being able to withstand that mentally is something that's extremely challenging for a lot of people. And if anybody's wishing to join the world of finance or crypto in that sense, then I believe that building that resilience in you is the most important thing. And that conviction that you need, that you would want to stay in that industry. You love what you do. That's something that I believe that's super necessary, and that's what I've learned over the years.
Superb. And I think that's a powerful advice. And thank you so much for that. And Taka, please share your experience on how is it being hosted on the Guiding Voice podcast.
It's a very fun experience. You have a very interesting, questions that you ask, and you're extremely a great host. I hosted podcasts before. Your sense of excitement that I see through, is something that I think every podcast host should have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words. And I really appreciate you taking time and joining me in this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. I'm sure it is going to add a lot of value to our community. So it was pleasure having you, Taka, and look forward to having you again in future on the Guiding Voice. So have a great time ahead. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
All right, so friends, that was our episode with Takatoshi Shibayama. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request. If you haven't already subscribed to our podcast, please subscribe to The Guiding Voice from wherever you have tuned in, because subscribing keeps you updated on new episodes. And if you have enjoyed the conversation and found it useful, please share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who would also like The Guiding Voice. So spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you. Now let's cruise into the trivia segment of today's episode. It is about Japan. We had an amazing guest who has shared a lot of knowledge around investment banking, about finance industry, and the way crypto is transforming, and also a bit of careers in finance. I thought I would present you a facts related to Japan, and most importantly, the less known facts. So first one is about love hotels. So Japan's unique love hotels with their imaginative and eccentric themed rooms offer a fascinating insight into a distinct aspect of Japanese culture where privacy and creativity come together in a unique way. So just in case if you happen to visit Japan, try out love hotels. And the second one is about Yubari King melons. The reputation of Yubari King melons, exceptionally expensive and sought after as luxury gifts, showcases the value placed on quality as well as craftsmanship in Japanese agriculture and also gifting culture. And the third one is about Island of Cats. Aoshima Island, which is known as Cat Haven Island, provides a charming and unusual experience for cat lovers. So, with cats significantly outnumbering human residents, it's a heartwarming and distinct aspect of Japan's natural and cultural landscape. So I'm going to stop here talking about Japan now. It's your turn. In case if you are aware of any less known facts about Japan, please feel free to drop your comments. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can comment there. Or if you have found this episode on social media platform, please comment there. And that's it for today's episode. So thank you so much for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome community. Folks, we would love to hear from you. So do not hesitate to share your feedback, ideas, topic recommendations, or guest speaker suggestions either through social media channels, or you can also email us at theguidingvoiceforyou@gmail.com. So let's create content that resonates with you. I'm your host Navin Samala, a lifelong learner, and my goal is to have impactful conversations that improve not only your life but also your career. So until next time, take care, stay inspired. And remember, the future holds great things because the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you all in the next episode with another amazing guest. Take care.